So this is the rhythm. This is the basis of all of my work, because this is the basis of nature and this is the basis of women's flow. And it doesn't need to have words, but as people we put words on it to make it more understandable, yeah? But it doesn't have rules, it doesn't have dogma. Nature makes the dogma. It's all about synchronicity and, someone said flow? Surrender, flow, and the surrender and the letting go and the movement and the exploration, all of it is in there. It's in the rhythm, right? This is the story of how nature plays out on the land, celestially, and in our own bodies, yeah, within us, and externally as communities too. So we start, it's a map. It's a map, I call it the map for self-crafting. I'm not interested in self-mastery or really even self-growth, yeah? But we craft, we self-craft ourselves. It's a constant working process. Women, you know, if you heard me speak this morning, the acknowledgement that women from the beginning of time, we had practices, we had sacred practices, and they involved craft. They involved cooking, making, coming together. Yet it was something that was within our everyday life and didn't need to be structured into like, okay, I've got half an hour after work to go and do my practice. Yeah, life was practice, and it was based on this rhythm. And of course we know that, as I mentioned this morning, like that was taken away through various acculturation and colonisation practices, starting around the turn of the Common Era, where so within my own lineage, like in the British Isles, of course, when Julius Caesar started moving into Britain. And the first colonisation happened there. And then, of course, later in the Scandinavian lineage, which was actually the last Western stronghold of non-Christianity, yeah? It was the last place where Christianity broke through and shattered the indigenous culture. And so in Scandinavia, it was as late as the 800s, yeah. And so they're the two areas that I think a lot about around history and herstory and how they have shaped who we are now. And then, of course, I think about the 80s and the 90s in terms of women's revolution and how that shaped who we are. Yeah? And so I'm just going to name one of my mentors, Thea Gaia. We call her the midwife of the goddess in Australia. In the 80s, she woke up and realised that maybe the church didn't have that much going for it for women, and she looked for a new path and started looking at Maria Gimbutas's archaeology and different practices of mythology around the world, and found out that actually women's business was sacred ones, yeah. And this is something that I think now, 2019, we can almost take for granted. But in the 80s, no one was talking about that in Australia. So this work stands on the shoulders of women like her, and then it stands on the shoulders of women who had their practices taken away by church and culture, and it stands on the shoulders of women who were doing the practices before that happened, yeah. So we go all the way back to the very first women. Women's work involved things like weaving, threading, spinning. Who's seen Miss of Avalon, the movie, or read the books? There's a beautiful scene where Igraine is like in trance and she's weaving and she's going into probably what you would refer to as a meditational practice, but it's trance, yeah? It's magic, it's ritual, and being able to see and seer much further than where she is right now in the world. And once upon a time, that was like a practice that everybody just accepted as normal, yeah? We're the only culture ever that doesn't think that there's a world outside of our human bodies, yeah? Like, transpersonal doesn't exist in our culture, but every other culture that's ever existed had it. So who's the crazy one? I'm kind of just weaving all of that into this story of rhythm right now. And so let's start with the place where the threads are first woven, where we take the fleece and we start to weave that in, yeah? So this is she who is spinning, she who is imagining, she who is becoming. Yeah? She lives in this place of darkness coming into light. Yeah? There's something that it's not really made of anything yet, it's a fleece, but as we work it, it becomes something. This is winter coming into spring. And then as it threads more and becomes more woven, spinning around and around, we get into a proper thread, proper yarn, and we come in from spring to summer. Yeah? Now we have something that's full and real. We start to make it into something. Eventually it becomes something that we then can use and harvest for ourselves, autumn, and then once we're kind of done with that, or once the creative process is finished and the job is complete, we just cut it and it's the end, coming back into winter. There's one way we could talk about the rhythm. We could talk about the rhythm as the place where the sun rises in the east, We could talk about how it goes across to the north, like through the sky, up high, and becomes most intense in the north. And then, of course, it comes down in the west. Yeah, so this is like late in the afternoon. And then over in the south, there's no sun, there's no light. Yeah, it's the darkest place. This is what I mean by, this is not like a dogma that I made up. It's not like elements that I said, when we look in this direction, the eagle is flying at us. And I don't know. I can't even make that shit up anymore. But, this nature has laid this out. I don't have to make it up. It's right there. Yeah. Another version of it is the moon cycles. So let's go, people who have done this before, you're not allowed to play this game. Yeah? Just going by just a little bit that I've given you already, where is the full moon on our map, on our rhythm? Correct. Full moon is in the summer, yeah? We've got this increasing intensity up here. There's fruit on the tree. I mean, the colour gives it away, and the full moon, yeah? So then where would the darkest moon be, or the new moon? So the waxing means going up, getting bigger. And then, of course, the waning moon. And then we have ones in between. We have the little tiny waxing moon, beginning of the crescents. Gets to half, yeah? So it looks like a half, but we call it the quarter because it's a full cycle. Yeah? So after the first quarter, it becomes gibbous. It's like big fat, like an egg. And then she's fully full. And then from there, that's like as far as the pendulum can swing, and that has to start swinging back. So it starts to shrink down into the first crescented waning moon, final quarter, and then the last little slithers of the balsamic moon. So, where are we now? Right now, in time and space. New moon, yeah. New moon like a day or two ago. Yeah. So this cycle, the moon cycle, happens about 28 and a half days it takes to go fully around, yeah. So it's constantly shifting, it's constantly changing. That's why you don't feel the same every single day. So that's one cycle, 28 days. This inner cycle, the seasonal cycle, is obviously like 360 odd days. Yeah, that's why you never feel the same through the year. That's why you shouldn't eat the same food all year. I don't want to say should. You can do it if you want, but that's why you probably don't want to eat the same food every year, all year, because here, very different things are growing than here. Yeah, and our bodies know that. The mitochondria in our bodies are searching the environment all the time for information. They take it from the light that's in our environment, and then signal our body for information that it needs to continue to look after ourselves. And so if we're trying to eat bananas in winter or pomegranates in spring, then we've got an issue, because that's not what our mitochondria knows is around in the light. Just in the same way that if we eat a lot of mangoes throughout the year, which don't even grow where we live, right? There's no mangoes growing in Canberra. Then that's a confusing signal as well for our bodies. This rhythm has been with humans since the beginning of time. Yeah? This is what we evolved with, all of us, regardless of what our blood heritage is or what our spiritual lineage is. Like, this is the information. Yeah. Obviously, like anything, when you have to teach something and break it down, it becomes very simplified. Yeah, and I want to acknowledge that many different cultures have many different types of seasons. In Canberra, we have the perfect 4 seasons, so it's easy to do. Yeah. But we know that Indigenous cultures right across Australia have different amounts of seasons depending where they are, and call them very different things and experience that differently. But I think for most of us, particularly because we're in Canberra or Sydney, this makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's one model. It's a helpful model. It's helpful because so many layers can be put on this. Yeah. Our menstruation can be put on this layer. Where would ovulation happen? There's actually little signals on the map. So ovulation being when the egg is ready to be fertile, sitting there all juiced up and full of nourishment. Yeah. So that's the egg there, yeah? And then when does the bleeding happen? When the stripping away. If the egg's not fertilized, the cycle continues. There's a bit of sadness in our body because that biological clock's got to tick for another season. Or maybe not. But when it's not fertilized, it starts to strip away. All of that nice, squishy, juicy stuff that it created to hold that egg isn't needed anymore. It strips down and away, and it takes us to, the new moon. Yeah, that's like the little red lady in the red cup. Yeah. So that's the rhythm of nature and our cycles, and sometimes our cycle doesn't play like that. Yeah. So I bleed on the full moon, like across the board. It's just, sometimes I start to move and then it just goes back to full moon. And, some people will say, oh, that's because like our artificial light environment in this society is so screwed up with our rhythms. I live with no lights. I live out in the middle of nowhere and I don't have electricity or Wi-Fi that runs all the time. There's nothing screwing with my system. I bleed on the full moon. Yeah, it's a full moon bleed. And what I find is the bleeding stuff that happens to my body is very physical, right? Like many of you are familiar with the concept that because you're stripping away, there's an internal nourishment that needs to happen for ourselves, like a care for ourselves that we have to do because our body is going through a process. Yeah, your womb almost doubles in size from the time of ovulation to your bleed. So there's a real need internally to look after yourself. But at the same time, the energy, the external celestial energy is like, wah! Like, let's go, it's intense, like, party. Yeah. So when you bleed at that time, what I've found is that I have to look after myself, like physically, and I've got a million ideas and I just got to get shit done. Like got to get stuff done in my head and like projects, like, work style projects, but I do have to look after my body as well. Yeah, and that shows up so when I teach a regular movement class in Braidwood, and I'll talk to all the women before the class, like, who's bleeding? You are, okay, right. So the class is not the same for every person there because the women who are bleeding are not going to do 5 rounds of high intensity and the women who aren't bleeding are going to do that because that's when their body's ready and it's right for it. It wants the extra intensity. It wants that extra layer of stress to be adaptable for the next season. Yeah, stress in our bodies is about creating adaptability so that we can become the next best version of ourselves, or the next crafted version of ourselves. And so we've got to look at that in practice. And so I think the little write-up for my workshop probably said something about that, did it? Was it about like how you do your movement practice with the rhythm? Yeah, cool. So I want to bring that in. And now I want you to have a look at where you are in your cycle right now. Yeah, so maybe you're bleeding, maybe you just bled, maybe you're menopausal. So if you're menopausal or you're pregnant or you've got bits inside you that stop you from bleeding or you've had your womb out, you're going to follow with the moon. Yeah, the moon just gives us the rhythm. But for those of you who might not be with the moon, you have your own rhythm. Yeah, and I just think that's because we all walk to our own drums. Yeah, if I was rhythming with everyone else, I wouldn't do half the shit that I do in my life. So have a think about, so is anyone bleeding? Would anyone like to share that they're bleeding right now? Yeah, okay, so can you move over here into the circle, Will? Yeah, and who might be ovulating? So if you're ovulating, you probably bled about 2 weeks ago. That's probably, yeah? On a general 28-day cycle, yeah? So you guys are going to move over there. Okay. Anyone who doesn't bleed anymore is going to come down here into the dark moon space. Okay, so if you bled a week ago, you're probably here. And if you're about to come up to a bleed, you're over here. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and so then adjust yourself appropriately. If you know you're a little bit either way, you can move that around. Yeah. Wow, look at all our beautiful wise women over there. Awesome. Okay, just feel into that for a second. Look down your zone of where you are on the map. Look at all the things that are kind of represented there, and just tune into that. See how that feels. Does it feel different than where you were sitting before? Did every single person move? Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, except for Lauren and not Heather. Yeah. You guys are already in tune. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about if there's a difference about the feeling. The beauty is that it just continually changes. So you're only going to be there for a couple of days. Yeah. So it's not that you're menopausal and so therefore you're there all the time. You're just going with the moon. Yeah, going with that flow. Do any of you who are menopausal remember whether or not, did you pay attention and do you know if you were bleeding outside of, the common general cycle? Do you know you were a full moon bleeder maybe? Okay, yeah. So then it can kind of make sense why we might start to feel comfortable in a different space even though the moon is there, because your body did that rhythm many more times in your life than you've done it without it. Yeah?
I sort of feel a bit sad that I never made that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. No one told us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No one tells us. Yeah. Yeah, that's super important to me. Because if we don't know that, there's nothing to build from. This is our foundation. This is who we are as women on the planet right now. and would have been who we were as women on the planet 2,000 years ago. It's the same story. Yeah. Just 2,000 years ago, we had other women with us who were telling the story, and we got to sit together when we were bleeding. Yeah. And that's why I like you to move into those spaces, because it's like, oh, these are my women. Yeah, this is my tribe. Are you by yourself? Yeah. I'll be with you.
In every way.
Yeah. No. I was like, oh, is that a story for you? Yeah. Is that a birth story?
I'm being silly.
Yeah. No, but so the stories that come up through our cycles can be information as well. Yeah, can tell us things. The rhythm has many layers and can be archetyped in many different ways. But the simplest way, I think, to archetype is through life phase. Now, and in saying that, there's two types of that, right? So you would have probably heard of a maiden mother crone situation with archetypes. That's one way of doing it. It's very mother-based, yeah? It's very like, got to be pregnant to tell a story-based, which I don't think is so relevant to women of our culture. So I like to just think of the stages of our life and who we are and what we're learning and what we're becoming. You know, part of my tradition is ulog, this understanding that all the things that come before us, all the people up our bloodlines, all of their experiences are threaded together into just like one maybe beautiful or maybe messy thread, yeah? And we're at the front of that thread, and every step we take continues to spin that thread. So through our life cycle, we're living the daughter and the enchantress and the queen and the wise woman many times over in experiences, yeah? So there's the age one that's pretty obvious, yeah? Like we could split this rhythm into, say, 25-year cycles, ending at 100-year-old, you know, that's an easy way. But there's also like the many projects that happen in your life and the cycles that you go through in that. And at any time, I could be working with different women around the map for different things. So maybe I'm starting a new job, and I'm also getting pretty proficient at some sort of boogie style, yeah? And I'm also having to be super responsible for all the people in my house. And I fucking know a lot of shit about something that no one else knows, yeah? So you can be all the things at once. And in the middle is the initiatrix. She's the one who, when you think you know what you're doing, like when you think you're all those things, she just comes in like a big chocolate wheel and goes, and it all changes, yeah? The wheel of change. With that in mind, I would invite you to move into a space in the circle that reflects one of those women. Like what's going on? It might be today. Like where do you feel like you are on the map today? Am I like, I've known everything I've heard, like all the workshops, I'm all over it, I know what's going on? Or are you like, far out, this is all new? Yeah, I'm totally in the daughter phase. I don't even know what these people are talking about half the time. Yeah, could be about today. Could be about you are starting a new job next week, and that might be what you're tuning into. So have a look at those women. The daughter is about beginning. She's about kind of getting a feel for stuff, but not anywhere near there yet. Yeah, just like, okay, I'm suddenly aware that there's a bigger world out there, but I have no idea how to navigate it. The enchantress, she's like, remember when you were like 19 and you were like, I'm the sexiest thing in the world? Every time I walk past, guys are looking at me. Yeah, that's her. So like, I'm pretty proficient. Like I think I know what's going on, but actually I've got no idea. That's her. The daughter knew, she didn't know. The enchantress thinks she knows. The queen, she is responsible. Yeah, she can sit in her throne. She's got full awareness of all the parts, all the moving parts around her. She feels very solid in her base, and she can make or break kings just with a glance too. Yeah, so it's very different to enchantress who's trying so hard. And the queen's just like, I got this. Yeah. And then the wise woman says, well, I don't even fucking care anymore. I've so got it. It's so inbuilt into me that I don't even have to think about it anymore. It just is. Yeah. And when people ask me advice, I might give it, or I might just do the work it out for yourself. Yeah. That's a bit of her. Yeah. The queen's willing to give advice. She's like, yeah, sure. Come and ask me. I've done everything. I know how to speak to you. But the wise woman is sort of like, maybe I'll tell you, or maybe you could work it out for yourself. Where's the wisdom going to come from? So you can see that she sits in between, you know, kind of the dead and the dark and the refresh and the new, yeah? Because she is the unfolding still, yeah? Thea, my mentor Thea, talked about, she said, I always thought there were 5 archetypes, or I don't think she called them archetypes, 5, you know, life phases, being the crone being the last one, and she said when she hit 80, she realised actually there's a moon crone too. She was like, I'd just be happy to sit and stare at a wall all day. It's like this new level of, it's not that I don't give a fuck, but I am good where I am. Yeah? That's why I think the wise woman lives here and not between autumn and winter. Yeah? Autumn and winter is the queen. She's got it together, but life is unfolding towards an end. Yeah? It's like my 82-year-old client at the moment who's just moved into a retirement home, and she says, this is the last house I'm going to have. And that, like, knowing of that and that holding that and owning it, it's like, yes, this is it now. Yeah? It's not a sadness. It's like, here's the phase. I'm into it. Where am I? I'm all over it. So cycle-wise, Ruth, I'm up here, yeah, cycle-wise, like I've done my bleeding stuff. But then if I went to where am I professionally, I probably feel like I'm kind of here. Where am I as a family person? I go between here and here. So right now, what are we, April? So yeah, we're technically, like for the year, we're about here right now, yeah? So this would be the autumn equinox. That would be the winter solstice. So we're like April, just past the autumn equinox. Maybe just a bit more.
I chose the pomegranate representing Persephone because I can definitely feel her starting to descend.
So do you all know the story of Persephone? Yeah, you know my version of the story of Persephone. So Persephone is a Greek goddess. Her first name was Kore. Kore was the daughter. She's the daughter of Demeter, Demeter being the earth goddess, the one who makes bounty happen, makes fruits happen. Kore was like prancing around in the fields with her friends and feeling like the mother Demeter was holding her back. You know that feeling? Teenagers, we've all been there. Yeah, she really wanted the apron strings cut, but couldn't get away from Demeter. Imagine how powerful and holding Demeter is as the fruit-bearing woman that makes all of life happen on earth. So Kore saw a little hole in the ground and thought she might go down there and check it out. So she got her friends to be all like, and she went down. And it took a couple of days before Demeter realised that she was gone. When she went down, she went into the underworld. Yeah, so we're talking about Greek and Cretan mythology. So she went down into the underworld and she met her grandmother, Hecate. Hecate being the wise woman, yeah, in the 3 generations. Hecate said, I'm so glad you're here. Like, I've been waiting for you to come and you to get this wisdom. Yeah, like now's time for you to learn about being a woman, learn the secrets, learn the mystery. Yeah, your mother wasn't going to give it to you. She's too busy like being a mother. She doesn't want to let go of that. But now it's your turn. Yeah. So she stayed down there and she did the work with Hecate and learned all the mysteries. Meanwhile, Demeter was really upset, was like crying and bashing her chest and all those things that you do when you're in grief. And to the point that she didn't do her job anymore, the world started to die off, the fruit fell off the plants, the snows fell, all of that. The world was barren. And she asked all the gods and they said they didn't know. Until the point where one day she was all bundled up like a beggar woman sitting somewhere in the city and, somebody said, oh my gosh, that's Demeter, and still she hasn't finished her grieving and we all need to eat, right? There's a famine now. That's been long enough without fruit. So they called Kore up. Hecate said, of course, yes, now is the time. She gave her 6 pomegranate seeds, 6 pomegranate seeds, and said, this represents the time that you will come down each year and work with me, and then you will come up for the other 6 months and be with your mother. Yeah? So as Kore re-entered into the world, she took the name Persephone. She rejoins Demeter. Demeter gets all excited, makes fruit happen again. And so that's the story of the rhythm. Yeah, that's the summer and the winter. Yeah? That's the empowered feminine story. There's another one with Hades and rape and stuff, but that's a later one. Yeah, this is the original one. So thank you, Julie, for bringing Persephone and Kore. So that's why the pomegranate is there for representation of autumn, and of course the mirror as the reflective process, because as summer happens, we start to look at the harvest and what we've achieved in the intense period. Once we start moving down here and the leaves are falling, there's no more creative input to be had. Yeah, if you start pushing creatively at this point, you're going against the flow. Yeah, that becomes a lot harder. Now, of course, the opposite of a truth is always true. So you can work it just like you can bleed out a full moon. But it's hard work. Yeah, it's a lot harder. This is the energy that builds and grows and gets stronger. Yeah, from the spring to the summer, everything is strengthening in intensity. But then this is the energy that drops off and lets go and surrenders and shifts and takes us to the place that we actually need to be. Yeah. Up here, it's really easy to go off track. Like, yeah, I want to do everything. Like, da, 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 da. Here I am, world. Look. Oh, maybe that wasn't really what I wanted. So as the harvest happens, we get the chance to come back into ourselves. We get time in winter or in bleed time to like be a bit introspective and look at and dream. Yeah, this is the dreaming space. What is it that I really do want to do now? Because it's all new again. I'm allowed to change every plan I had before because this is fresh. Yeah, you think about the blood strips away, everything's new. Yeah, and then the egg starts to move down again, and that's a different cycle. So we have the power as empowered feminine to make a new cycle every single time. We get to change everything every 28 days or 26 or 32 or whatever you do. Yeah? And then if that doesn't work, you've got every year and you've got every moon cycle. Yeah. And every day, yeah. So we could put a clock on here. Nice segue. So I designed a diary based on the rhythm. It's a daily planner that has the clock on it, yeah? So here is 6 a.m. where the sun comes up, yeah? Approximately. We know through the year that changes. The nights get longer, the days get shorter, etc. But around 6 a.m. is kind of the average of where the sun comes up. Midday is here, the most intense part of the day. 6 p.m. is where the sun goes down and we start to chill. And then midnight, where the darkest part of the night is. Yeah. So every day is a cycle that you get to change as well. If we talk about gratitude, where were we? Just in that last workshop, just talking about having a gratitude journal. It's built into the planner. I was like, I don't need 4 different books. I need one book altogether. So I created the planner for myself and then I sold them because everyone else wanted them. Gratitude is kind of what happens over here, right? It's like all the good stuff has now become, and I can look at it and I can hold it in myself and I can see what I got from that, yeah, and who I'm now becoming. So that's gratitude. If you're a project planner, the rhythm is a much better way to go than a linear kind of diary because you visually see what's going on for you. Yeah? And when you juxtapose the general rhythm with your own specific rhythm that you learn over time, like when you bleed or like the fact that you know that you feel super energetic, like here, for some reason through the year, like this is my time where I'm ready to go. And other people might find it here, that's it. Over you know, the months or the years that you do this work, you find your own rhythm and then you get to work with that and everything just gets easier and easier. It's flow. Who said flow? Someone said flow. Yeah, it's the flow. Yeah. When I teach about wellness, we've got 5 elements. Over here is nutrition. It's everything that goes in and out of your body. Here is light. Yeah, so the way that we interact with both the sun and the moon, or the light. Here is flow. This is like everything that's moving in and around the internals of your body. This is your menstruation. These are your emotions. This is your dreaming. Dreaming moves into here. And this is movement. This is your relationship with the earth underneath you. That was a relationship with the light in the sky and the celestial world. This is your relationship with the earth underneath your feet. Yeah? In the center is the rhythm. That's what it is. Yeah? It could include like your sleep, your practice, yeah? Whether that's a mindful practice, whether that's your crafting, whether that's the practice of how you change from day to day. That all exists here. Yeah? How you focus on how you change exists here. You can't actually be focusing on the change out there because that's where the change is happening. Here is where we go into the centre and we get to see it all around us.
So that's grounded.
Well, it's all grounded, I think, yeah. But this is the centre, so we can witness it all. Yeah?
So is that like the centre of the project? Say if you were doing some crafting and you're looking at when's my creative phase, but it's always happening, like the project's always happening.
Yeah, nice way to say it. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I was just thinking when you were standing there, remember the old merry-go-round? Where if you sat in the middle, everything moved a lot slower, whereas if you're on the outside, it's like, whoa!
Beautiful. Yes, I love it. That's great. Yeah, really great. So there's kind of a dark, there's a half where there's not so much light, and there's a half where there's a lot more light. Yeah. So if we wanted to turn it into a breath, it would be like, here is where the breath goes in, And here is where the breath goes out. Yeah? When you're out. So you know when you have to go to a party and you're just like, I don't want to speak to people, I don't want to go. When you live in a small town, you don't even want to go to the shops because it's the same thing as going to a party. Because you can't just go to the shop because it's like, you know, right? There's like 50 people that are going to stop you in the shop. So that feeling is here. But the feeling where you're like, yeah, I'm going to the shop, I'm going to see people, be cool, it'll be great. That's over here. It's up here. Yeah. And that's great to honour that in ourselves and know that sometimes we still have to be here, even if we don't internally feel like we want to be. Yeah. And so when you know that and you go, okay, well, I do have to go to work or I do have to go and buy milk, then you work the other parts of your life, there's other layers of the map to help balance and address that for yourself, you know, so that not everything has to be out here when you want to be in here. You can manage that. That's what I mean when I say, like, I bleed at the full moon, but I manage the two. There's a happening there together. There's a swarming and swirling, spiraling in. So the work of self-grafting is about self-responsibility, right? It's about understanding who and where we are, and then what we're going to do with that. And so that's an element of self-grafting, yeah. But there's lots of elements of self-grafting. It's about autonomy and adaptability, yeah. So I know I've been saying, like, we go down and then we go up and we go down and we go up, and I don't want to presume that happens every single month all the time, because that's what makes us crazy. Sometimes you're allowed to have longer periods of one or the other. Yeah. Again, this is a model. This is a teaching model. Nothing is ever quite that reflective, and the opposite of a truth is also a truth. Yeah. And physically, there's a rhythm that cannot be changed. Yeah, that's evolutionarily we have evolved to have a circadian rhythm that lasts for about 24 to 27 hours, and it is exactly on this mark. Yeah, we wake up in the morning when the light comes out. The light shines into our eye and onto our skin. It sets off our cortisol reaction. We become more energized. We get shit done in the day. A long time ago, that would have been like getting food. Now we just go to work to get food. Then as the sun starts to go down, we get a new level of coordination, yeah, at this point. And then as the sun goes down further, the melatonin starts to come up, cortisol goes away, we start to relax. We're now set up for all of the processes that need to happen at night when we're sleeping to reproduce cells or to kill off cells. That can't happen if we don't do all of that, yeah? So if we get to this point and we're still awake, yeah, so this is like, what's this? 12. So this is 11 o'clock. Yeah. Once every few months, that's a different thing. But I'm saying, like, if we're doing this every day and we're still awake now and we're looking at a screen and we've got all our internal lights on, that's already confused our circadian rhythm because the melatonin didn't get to happen here. So then you turn off your TV and you go to sleep and you're like, I'm not asleep. I wonder why. And then throughout this period of time, this is where the real cell restructuring happens. Yeah, if we don't do that, if we don't have redox potential, it means that our cells cannot regenerate. They can't break off the bits they don't need and reproduce themselves and recreate themselves. If that happens, then over time, we'll actually, by the time we get to here in the morning again, we start to pull from our stem cells. Then we get really tired. Then we get chronic disease. Then we end up going round and round and round and round and round. And we push, like we start pushing really hard because we've got chronic disease and everything is really difficult. But I'm supposed to keep going because I'm like in the prime of my life and I'm really healthy. And then eventually we go into a collapse here and we stay there for a really long time. Yeah. So yes, sometimes the rhythm changes, and other parts of the rhythm we can't change. We can't change that. You have to get up and have light here. You have to eat by this time of the day for most of the days for most people. Yeah, there's crazy people that fast forever. We're not talking about them. The average person. You have to turn your lights off and go to sleep. Yeah, and then you have to regenerate yourself the next day.
I think I skipped one of those. I think it's that energising bit over there. In the morning.
You start your day with coffee? Is there coffee here?
No, I don't have coffee until later. But yeah, I can't remember when I felt energised when I wake up.
You go outside? Do you go outside here?
No,
Get
should I?
sunlight in your eyes here?
Oh, I just open the curtains, that happens.
No. Go outside. Go outside here and see if it changes. Yeah, because if there's a window, it's blocking some of the UV, which is not how we've evolved. We've evolved with all of the spectrums of light all the time, till the last few hundred years. Yeah. So at this point, your mitochondria, they're the little batteries inside your cells, little antennas looking for all the information from the environment. They are looking for light. Like if I'm awake, there must be light. And then that will hit your suprachiasmatic nucleus, sets off all the hormonal systems in your body for the rest of the day. So if you're feeling really lethargic, it could be that all of those hormones haven't kicked into gear for what they need to do for the beginning of the day. So you get to here and you're like, I really need a coffee, because that will click it on. Yeah, that'll give me the cortisol dump that I need, that I would have had at 6 a.m. But of course, coffee is not the same as light, so I get here and then I'm really tired. That's the 3 o'clock dump. And then I'll eat a heap of sugar, so I'm awake again, so I can get through the night. And then I get really tired again. But then I watch some TV to keep me awake, because I can't go to sleep yet, because I've got to do whatever people do at that time of night. And then boom, now you're lying awake again. Yeah? So that's another way we can look at the rhythm, and I teach that a lot in my work, obviously, as well. There's some pictures up here that just give you some other layers of the map. There's a menstrual calendar. You might track your menstrual cycle. So there's many ways you could track your cycle, yeah, but it is great. Paying attention to the cycles is how we first get in line with the cycles, yeah. So paying attention to when the sun comes up, where it moves in the sky through your day, that's going to help you get attuned to the cycle. Paying attention to what the moon is doing every night, that will help you get in tune. Some women say that they find a lot of usefulness in changing the lights in their house to reflect the intensity of the moon through a cycle. I poo-poo that just because I think, like, when it's dark, don't have lights on. But, you know, if you want to do that, you could do that. But apparently that works for some people. And, of course, as we get more in rhythm, we'll find that we have less menstrual problems, yeah, less pain, because suddenly everything's going with the flow that we're built for, not fighting against it all the time. Yeah.
So, Hollie,
yes.
with getting up in the morning, do you don't get up before the sun comes up? Get up, however, whenever you wake up, yeah. But if you could avoid the fake lights, like the white lights, then you would try and avoid those. Maybe light a candle if you're still inside. And then if you're already awake, then you might as well be outside as the sun's coming out. That's like primo. That's the absolute best for us. But also just because, like, that's what our body's looking for. Our body's looking for the information that it gets from the sun, from the season, and from the food that we put into it. Yeah, that's what controls our circadian code. It's pretty awesome, actually. Your body is amazing, so amazing. Yeah, and we just get reminders of that through our menstrual cycle as well. So that's one version of how you could be taught the rhythm. Now you know it. Go and teach everyone you know. Tell all the women. Yeah, imagine we get to a point where we don't have to do these workshops anymore, and no one says, "I wish I had have known that before." That's the diary. I have a self-crafted wellness journal, which is based on those wellness elements that I talked about, and about your mitochondria and how you interact with your environment. I had chronic fatigue for 7 years. I couldn't get down the hallway. If I ran a workshop like this, I would be sick for a week. And so I worked out how to get better, because doctors weren't helpful, and neither were naturopaths or massage therapists or any of the other people that call themselves professionals. So I decided to work it out myself, and then I wrote a book about it because everyone wanted to know. Then I taught a class about it, which Ruth was at. And one day that course will be online because we recorded it all. But for now, the journal does it. We do a radio show with the journal. Each week, my husband and I talk about one of the steps in the journal and pull it all apart, look at the science, look at the evolutionary principles, all of that. It's on Braidwood Radio, which you cannot get in Canberra, unless you're on Facebook, because we live stream it on Facebook at the same time, and then all the videos are there. So that's Self-Crafted Wellness Radio. There's a bunch of flyers up here of workshops and stuff I've got going on. I own a company called Wise Gatherings. We do women and men's gatherings. So we've got some of each coming up. I've got a silent retreat coming up. I've got a wellness retreat. I have a clinic in Braidwood where you can work with me either for wellness or just for general therapy. It all comes together anyway, yeah, and it's all based on the rhythm always. First Moons for Girls is over there. Yeah, there's a heap of bizzo over there. So I wrote a book called The Rhythm of Life. It's just like an ebook, so if you want it, you can put your email down and then you'll be on my email list. But you'll get the book, yeah? So if that is interesting to you, it just kind of adds a few more layers that we haven't even touched on today, and just is another way to sort of think about it. Sometimes it's good to come back to it in a few weeks and revisit, you know, like read it again and go, yeah, now it's sinking in again. We got to pack up. Thank you. That was so fun. Yeah, good luck. Spread the word.